I'm Rabbi Isaac Serrata from Macomb Solel Lakeside Congregation here in Highland Park. I'm deeply honored to be here this evening. I'd like to thank Mayor Rodering and the City Council for the invitation. I'd like to thank everyone here for their leadership during this time of crisis. A week ago at a gathering in my synagogue, I said it's too soon to speak of healing when we're still in the depths of mourning. And that is still true tonight. It is hard to speak of healing when we are in these depths. It may be true for a long time to come. It will be a long time before we can walk these streets or in any town without looking to the rooftops for danger from above. It will be a long time before we can say the name Highland Park to someone who asks us where we come from without hearing their saddened knowing, oh, the way we do when we hear names like Columbine and Newtown. In this moment, we are, as the psalm tells us, walking through the valley of the shadow of death. We are still in that shadow, remembering those who were murdered, praying for those injured, and standing with those traumatized by these horrific moments to slowly step forward together. Because we cannot stop to linger in this valley. It's too soon to say what we've learned, but already knowing that we can care for one another in our community, and also knowing we can reach out to those in need in other parts of our city and our nation. The psalm says, I will fear no evil. And while we have our anxieties, we will not give in to fear. We go forward with the faith and conviction that the problems that face us are not insoluble. And one day, with hard and determined work, we will see the other side of the valley. Healing is perhaps a tiny glimmer in the distance, but each of us is a light. Each of us can do some good. Each of us can spread some kindness. Each of us can make some change. Each of us can strive to bring some badly needed light into our darkened world.
With heavy hearts, we welcome you here tonight.
Con gran pesar les damos la bienvenida esta noche.
Well, I'm so proud of our community for coming together. I wish it were not because of a tragic act of violence.
Si bien estoy muy orgullosa de nuestra comunidad por unirse de esta manera, desearía que no fuera por un trágico acto de violencias con armas.
The July 4th mass shooting was the bloodiest day we have ever experienced in Highland Park, caused by a hateful and cowardly individual who opened fire with an assault weapon during our annual July 4th hometown tradition.
El tiroteo masivo del 4 de julio fue el día más sangriento que jamás hayamos experimentado en Highland Park, causado por un individuo lleno de odio y cobarde que abrió fuego con un arma de fuego durante nuestra tradición anual del 4 de julio.
7 individuals were senselessly murdered, dozens more were injured, and countless numbers of our children and community members have been traumatized.
7 personas fueron asesinadas sin sentido, docenas más resultaron heridas e innumerables niños y miembros de nuestra comunidad han quedado traumatizados.
Tonight, we mourn for those who were murdered. We mourn for their families. We mourn for their friends. We mourn for their neighbors. We mourn for our community.
Esta noche lloramos por aquellos que fueron asesinados, lloramos por sus familias, lloramos por sus amigos, lloramos por sus vecinos y lloramos por nuestra comunidad.
We say the names of those who were taken from us as we remember them. They were brothers, sisters, husbands, wives, mothers, fathers, grandparents, cousins, friends, neighbors, colleagues, and so much more.
Decimos los nombres de aquellos que nos fueron arrebatados a medida que los recordamos. Eran hermanos, hermanas, esposos, esposas, madres, padres, abuelos, primos, amigos, vecinos, colegas y mucho más.
Catherine Goldstein of Highland Park, Arena McCarthy of Highland Park, Kevin McCarthy of Highland Park, Jacqueline Sondheim of Highland Park, Stephen Strauss of Highland Park, Nicolas Toledo Zaragoza of Morelos, Mexico, Eduardo Uvaldo of Waukegan. A moment of silence, please.
Vamos a guardar un momento de silencio, por favor.
The trauma of gun violence doesn't end when the shooting stops. Experiencing gun violence in our community has a lasting impact on all of us. We are all survivors. Each of us will have a different experience and a different timeline as we find a way to move forward into our new normal.
El trauma de la violencia armada no termina cuando cesan los disparos. Experimentar la violencia con armas en nuestra comunidad tiene un impacto duradero en nosotros. Somos los sobrevivientes. Cada uno de nosotros tendrá una experiencia diferente y una línea de tiempo distinta a medida que encontremos una manera de avanzar hacia nuestra nueva normalidad.
It is incumbent upon each and every one of us to honor those taken and those injured with action, whatever that means to you and to yours.
Nos incumbe a todos y cada uno de nosotros honrar a aquellos que se llevaron, a los heridos con acciones, sea lo que sea que esto signifique para ustedes y los suyos.
As we face the ugly truth of what happened here, we are reminded of the fragility and vulnerability of life.
Al enfrentar la fea verdad de lo que sucedió aquí, recordamos la fragilidad y vulnerabilidad de nuestras vidas.
It forces us to put things in perspective, challenges us to expand our understanding of how things work, and connects us with one another in profound ways.
Nos obliga a poner las cosas en perspectiva, nos desafía a expandir nuestra comprensión de cómo funcionan las cosas y nos conectan unos a otros de manera profunda.
We will keep those murdered in our hearts and in our minds as we work to resolve that this evil attack will not define who we are, nor will it define how we treat each other.
Mantendremos a los que murieron en nuestros corazones y en nuestras mentes mientras trabajamos para que este terrible ataque no defina quiénes somos, ni definirá cómo nos tratemos unos a otros.
We will recognize our common humanity as we live our lives.
Reconoceremos nuestra humanidad en común mientras continuemos viviendo nuestras vidas.
We acknowledge that the intensity of our grief and suffering represents the depth of the love that we hold for our neighbors and our hometown.
Reconocemos que la intensidad de nuestro dolor y sufrimiento representa la profundidad del amor que tenemos por nuestros vecinos y por esta nuestra ciudad.
We will listen to each other's stories and understand that in each and every story there is love, loss, and a need for hope.
Escucharemos la historia de los demás y entenderemos que en todas y cada una de nuestras historias hay amor, pérdida y una necesidad de esperanza.
We will care for each other and provide strength when it is needed most.
Nos cuidaremos unos a otros y brindaremos fuerza cuando más lo necesiten.
And with time, this will carry us through.
Con el tiempo, esto nos ayudará.
This is who we are. We are Highland Park, and we are strong together.
Esto es lo que somos. Somos Highland Park y somos fuertes, juntos.
We will now light candles to honor this time of mourning as we grieve the loss of those who were taken by senseless gun violence and those who were injured and are struggling to recover.
Ahora encenderemos velas para honrar este tiempo de luto mientras lamentamos la pérdida de aquellos que nos fueron arrebatados por la violencia con armas sin sentido y aquellos que resultaron heridos y ahora luchan por recuperarse.
We promise to hold them in our hearts and to honor their legacies.
Prometemos tenerlos en nuestros corazones y honrar sus legados.
Sir, HP. You gotta resist him. This gentleman here, give him screen.
Which gentleman? Which one?
No, move that, one, Reverend Gas.
Just keep it together, all right, everybody? Please?
My name is Reverend Quincy Worthington. I'm the pastor at Highland Park Presbyterian Church. And now as we go from this place, my dear friends, let us remember that our thoughts and our prayers, they do matter, but so do our actions. Let us now take the broken pieces of our heart and fit them back together collectively into one giant heart for our community and beyond. Let us now remember the more perfect union we were called to be in the visions of our forebears, who foresaw the better angels of our nature and understood certain rights, certain truths to be self-evident, and certain rights to be unalienable, life being chiefly among them. Let us cling to the dream of a prophet proclaimed in the heart of our capital at the feet of the great emancipator, urging us to fight physical force with soul force. The dream passed down through the ages by our prophets that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And we will beat our weapons of death and destruction into tools that sustain and nurture life. A life where our children no longer have to fear for their safety or run for cover. A life where they are free to be fully human and not dehumanized into targets. A life where they are fully seen and fully known and not pushed into thinking that terroristic acts of evil are their only resort. Let us go from here not wallowing in the valley of despair, but knowing that my freedom is found in yours and yours in the person next to you. Let's go from here not bitter and angry, but in knowing that our dreams and our hopes for a better tomorrow are a certain reality if we work together for them. Let us go from here not thinking that this is over now, that this service somehow brings some end, but in knowing that now our hard work begins of protecting and caring for our sisters and brothers from the avenues of Highland Park to the streets of Inglewood, from the shores of Lake Michigan to the banks of the Rio Grande, from the Bean in downtown Chicago to the Beanheads down in Washington, D.C. Now, when our legitimate differences threaten to tear us apart, let our universal commonality bind us together that much stronger, that we're all precious in the eyes of God, that each life has intrinsic value, that any blood is too sacred to be spilt needlessly on our streets. Now begins our hard work of ensuring the safety, the freedom, the humanity of each precious child of God given to our care. And let us not rest until the massacres and traumas just a week behind us never happened to any community or any person ever again. Let us not rest until our dreams are a reality. Let us not rest until our love proves too much for the special interest lobby to overcome. And so now, as this vigil ends, my dear family, now our hard work begins.
25 minutes vigil in Highland Park tonight to honor the victims, and we say their names once again: Catherine Goldstein, Irina McCarthy, Kevin McCarthy, Jacqueline Sunheim, Stephen Strauss, Nicholas Toledo Zaragoza, Eduardo Uvaldo. They were all killed 10 days ago during what was a traditional celebration held annually in Highland Park. The rabbi is saying tonight it will be a long time before we say Highland Park and don't think of a tragedy. And he said, while we will not have fear, we will have anxiety. And badly needed light is needed in our dark world. It is too soon to speak of healing in the depths of so much mourning.
Very solemn vigil, and certainly moments, as we saw even in those who had gathered there this evening, where their emotions overcame them with tears coming down their faces, the lighting of the candles one to another as light was shared among them. Very symbolic, of course, and even as we hear the Chicago pipe and drums, including their playing, for many Chicagoans, anyone in the Chicago area, it is so meaningful, so symbolic of the strength of the Chicago area in general, to hear Amazing Grace from the beginning and then the fading of the bagpipes at the end. I want to go back to what Rabbi Ike Sirota said as well, Cheryl, because he said at one point, he said it's too soon to speak of healing. He then quoted the psalmist in talking about how they have gone through the valley of the shadow of death, but that slowly, through something like this, slowly, that a community and people throughout the Chicago area begin those steps forward together to take them to the other side of that valley, and encouraging people to bring their own light to changing things. Pastor Quincy Worthington from the Presbyterian Church there being a bit more direct in his encouragement of activism. And of course, getting much more involved in the political aspects of this and what people are calling for right now in terms of gun control in particular. We heard him calling for people, though, that this would be the beginning, at least, for people to get involved in this if they haven't been involved in something already. But as he put it, he says, let's not rest until our dreams become a reality. Yeah, the hard work begins now, he said, and the universal commonality is bounding everyone together, because every life here had purpose. And one very special moment was when Mayor Rodering spoke her words, and then they were translated in Spanish. And of course, she talked about, we will keep those murdered in our hearts and in our minds as we work to resolve that evil attack will not define who we are, and it will not define how we treat each other. Rob Elgas anchoring our coverage live tonight from Highland Park. He was there to witness this ceremony, this beautiful tribute to the fallen. Rob.
Yeah, Cheryl and Alan, you mentioned, Alan, the rabbi speaking about healing, and being here and seeing the faces of all the people here, you get that sense that tonight that may be able to begin. Alan, you also mentioned the candles that residents are passing around and lighting, and there's also a white ribbon that says Highland Park Strong. You've seen that moniker a lot from the people here, but it's also more than just people from Highland Park. You see a lot of law enforcement here, and I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes because it is extensive, but you have officers who have come here to pay their respects. You have surrounding suburban folks who have come here just to pay their respects and their support. But what I see a lot of is embracing, a lot of hugging, as this community 10 days later is dealing with such a horrible tragedy and pushing forward. Some of that law enforcement you saw standing behind the mayor and priest and rabbi, standing up there offering their support for a community they helped protect as this all unfolded on July 4th. Something else I noticed about law enforcement, the overwhelming presence. And the rabbi mentioned this, that it's going to be some time before people are going to be able to not stop and look up at buildings, worried that perhaps someone is up there. And if you look above this building they're gathered in front of, there was law enforcement watching with binoculars, scanning the crowd, protecting this crowd. A new normal sort of in Highland Park as they make sure this never happens again. And we talked about change and healing a little bit too, and that has spread nationwide. Our Liz Nagy is out in Washington, D.C. with people from Highland Park that got on planes and drove their cars all the way to Washington, D.C. to push for change. If you're just tuning in, we've been covering a vigil here in the city of Highland Park, and the mayor spoke earlier about what this means to her community, Mayor Rotering, and we want to play a little bit of that for you.
The trauma of gun violence doesn't end when the shooting stops. Experiencing gun violence in our community has a lasting impact on all of us. We are all survivors. Each of us will have a different experience and a different timeline as we find a way to move forward into our new normal.
And that's what you hear and see being here live, is each person has a story to tell and an experience to share. People who grew up in Highland Park nationwide coming together with social media and coming here to pay their respects as well. It's a healing that is now spanning the country that will take time, a lot of time, in the short amount of time, Alan and Cheryl, since this happened. And then you see this, it's moving, to say the least, and you see law enforcement doing their jobs, and I can only imagine what those first responders are feeling tonight as they're working to watch us here, and also the memories that they're thinking about from that July 4th, 10 days ago.
And Rob, you talked about the lights during the vigil and the candlelight vigil there. And the song The Taps, of course, played by Carlos Sims, the Ravinia Festival jazz scholar. And as we know, taps comes from the Civil War era, for the time when it's a call for lights out. And it's also a time to remember those who gave their lives. So appropriately played tonight at this vigil, the Taps song, because 7 people lost their lives 10 days ago on July 4th at Highland Park at the intersection of Central Avenue and 2nd Street during a parade, a tradition celebrating the United States of America. And of course, Mayor Rotering talking about how this is a story of love, loss, and also it is a story and a celebration for a need for hope.
I think from what we heard from the mayor too, she made a very important point there, that the trauma of gun violence does not stop, it doesn't end when the shooting stops. And she deviated somewhat, just somewhat from her initial script that she was expecting to say when she said, "We are all survivors." She initially, in her written comment anyways, "We are these survivors," but we are all survivors. And Rob, I know you're staying by listening, and I just want to point that out, that she, in a way, is referring to everyone there, not just those who knew somebody or stood next to somebody who lost their life on July 4th, but to everyone and the entire community, and beyond Highland Park, of course. But there are parents and grandparents and teachers and young people and law enforcement, everyone from all walks of life, who, having gone through this, are affected by it in some way and are wondering what we can do about it and what we should do next. A first step, perhaps, this evening.
And speaking about next, of course, Liz Nagy has traveled because a group of women, a group of mothers, a group of people, a group of survivors, a growing coalition of people are traveling. They want to determine and make change in our nation's capital. They are demanding a national ban on assault rifles.
Right, and our Liz Nagy has been joining us, I know, for the past couple of days here, Liz, right from the nation's capital, where those women travel to get the attention of lawmakers, and all wondering, of course, in terms of the success they may have there in getting the change done that they want.
They've spent days meeting privately with federal lawmakers trying to rally support for a federal assault weapons ban. And today, this group of mothers who traveled to Washington made that message even louder.
Demand action now.
Their agony and their anger are now one and the same.
We have to make this stop.
Mothers who are now also mass shooting survivors now have to answer these questions.
Mommy, can bullets get through my door? When will my nightmares stop? Why couldn't the people that fell on the ground be protected by their mommies and daddies?
And mothers who couldn't protect their children inside a Uvalde, Texas classroom have a question for lawmakers.
But there is one question that should be on the forefront of their minds. What if the gunman never had access to an assault weapon?
Combat veteran turned Illinois Senator Tammy Duckworth knows about assault weapons.
They were able to penetrate
the fuselage of my aircraft in flight, traveling at 130 miles an hour from the ground. Imagine what the same type of weapon does to a human body or a child's body.
Congress couldn't agree to pass a federal assault weapons ban just weeks ago. The most recent federal gun bill does mandate more extensive screening on prospective gun buyers aged 18 to 21 and provides hundreds of millions of dollars in mental health funding. That passed with bipartisan support.
We just can't get anything done, and I don't know what it'll take. You know, if Uvalde wasn't enough, if, you know, Parkland wasn't enough, it's just never enough.
The Illinois Rifle Association did not want to comment on this newly renewed push for a federal assault weapons ban. We did reach out to the National Rifle Association, but didn't hear back. Historically, the NRA has staunchly opposed any sort of federal assault weapons ban. Reporting on Capitol Hill, Liz Nagy, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
Liz, thank you. And here in Illinois, a group of mothers set up a phone bank today. They did so in Winnetka to coincide with that rally, that event in Washington, D.C.
Well, the women are urging people to support lawmakers working on gun control measures.
I'm a volunteer for the Democratic Party of Georgia. How are you today?
The women calling voters in Georgia, and they are asking them to re-elect Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock, who is in a very close race with Republican Herschel Walker. Warnock is supporting more gun control laws.
I think that our community needed a place to come together to feel like we were doing something to try to make a change.
And Morris says she is never really gotten involved with activism before, but after the shooting in Highland Park, she wanted to do something.
And we heard some of that this evening at the vigil as well from Mayor Nancy Rotering, and also later on from Pastor Quincy Worthington. Rob Elgus joining us once again there from the site of the vigil in Highland Park in front of City Hall. Rob, let me get your thoughts on that. I know that Mayor Rotering before the vigil this evening indicated, I believe, that she is going to Washington, D.C. shortly to make her plans known and what she is hoping to accomplish.
Ellen Schill, she briefly talked to the media before this vigil. I think understands the importance of this being about her community as well, not taking questions from reporters, just giving a statement before getting up with first responders and other elected leaders to talk about what happened and how they're going to go on healing. In fact, we do have Mayor Rotering speaking a little bit earlier tonight about this. Let's listen to that.
We are a community that is still working to recover from a deep and violent trauma. And it was important for us to be able to tell our community that we were coming together and that they could feel safe as we work towards healing together. To start to bring peace to a community that is in a lot of pain.
Mayor understands that many people who live here have for generations and recognizes the cohesiveness of that as this community starts to wander down that uncertain path of healing. Also, though, some of the speakers during this vigil realize something, Alan and Cheryl, and you probably picked up on this too, that gun violence in this city, and when I say city, I mean Chicago and the surrounding communities, we are not immune to the horrible reality of gun violence, particularly in certain parts of Chicago. And so people here understand that. And they know that. These people go into work every day downtown and come back. These people see that and want to push for change because of that and because of what's happened here. So it's a strange merging of so much, particularly for the Chicago area, that few cities in this nation can relate to, but the people of Highland Park understand it. And now they're trying to move Cheryl and Alan toward some change, as we just talked about, obviously, but healing as well. And other members of the community, including from Chicago, whether it be law enforcement or just citizens, have come here to offer their support. As you can see, there has to be close to 1,000 people here.
Yeah, it's quite a showing, Rob. Has there been, I know it's difficult to say that there's consensus on one thing or another. You obviously have a group of women in Washington, D.C. right now who are actively calling for the reinstatement of an assault weapons ban. We know that, of course, in the United States, it only existed for 10 years, beginning in 1994. And even after that, there were people who questioned whether how effective it truly was. So here we are, once again, talking about something that we've been at this for quite some time. What may have changed here, perhaps, is the frequency that we're seeing of the mass shootings across our nation. Do you see that impact there, Rob?
I think there's an understanding of that clearly, Alan and Cheryl. Is it being discussed tonight? I don't. What I see is more camaraderie and embracing and togetherness, because there will be people here, just like anywhere in the United States, that are on different sides of what is happening in this country. All of us can agree that gun violence plagues the United States of America, and in Chicago for different reasons. But yes, I think that's going to come from this, Alan. It's just, as I got here today for the first time coming up here in person since this happened, I was just struck by a few things. That it's only been 10 days, that this is so fresh for so many people. And then also, like the Chicago area does for so many different tragedies, whether it be tornadoes or something horrible like this, or people come together. Chicagoans are proud, and whether you're from Highland Park or anywhere else, I get that sense here tonight, that it's a lot of people sharing grief and moving toward whatever may be next, which is, I think, unknown for so many people who live here and call this place home.
And Rob, earlier this week, we were talking about Mayor Rotering. She did make that trip to the nation's capital, meeting with President Biden, along with Illinois Senators Tammy Duckworth and Dick Durbin, talking about the gun violence and talking about the hope in moving forward and action. Reverend Worthington talked about thoughts and prayers, but he also talked about the importance of action. And you, Rob, are talking about it tonight. The total gathering of everybody with their thoughts and prayers, and also action must be taken along with their thoughts and prayers. A lot tonight, and Mayor Rotering also talking about how the hope gives them strength, and strength is what they need most that will carry them through to get to that point of taking action, and also remembering the lives lost and those who are still recovering from this massacre that happened on July 4th.
We are going to be checking back in with Rob in Highland Park there later on in our hour here. And remember, you can always find information about what happened there in Highland Park, that particular shooting, the victims from that, and the continuing investigation. You'll find that on our website at abc7chicago.com.
We're going to take a short break, everybody, and we'll talk to you on the other side as you take a live look along the lakefront today. We will talk with Greg Dutra a little bit later, talking about a forecast that includes a beach hazard. Thank you for staying with us and joining us on this very special edition of the 7 o'clock show. We'll be right back on the other side of a break. Yeah, it's a beautiful sunset here on the this Wednesday night. You can see the whitecaps and the waves. It was a lot of wind out there today. There is a beach hazard. The red flags are flying a little bit along the lakefront at the beaches today.
They have been, that's for sure. So people be careful if you're around the shoreline there, right, Greg? That's going to continue for a bit, right?
It is, yeah. Into tonight, that northeasterly wind, which was actually going to stay tomorrow, too. So we could end up seeing this re-risen for tomorrow. And you can see even the chop inside of the playpen here as those winds have been out of the northeast. But it has been like some air conditioning for the city and the lakefront here today. 71 Waukegan, 74 at O'Hare, 78 degrees right now in Aurora. You can see those warmer temperatures as you get out away from Lake. 80 Morris, 82 Seneca, 80 degrees in Streator. Most of us were at or even slightly below our normal high temperatures today, even if you were out away from the lake. 70 in Chesterton, though, and 70 degrees in Crown Point. Taking a look at the satellite and radar, just a few scattered rain showers and thunder showers popped up off to our south here for today. But in general, high pressure, really quiet weather is in store for us, not only through the rest of tonight, but also into tomorrow and the next couple of days, really. Just a few little ribbons of energy that could bring us some showers or thunder showers. All right, here's future radar. This is going through tonight and into early tomorrow morning. About mid 60s for your low temperature tomorrow. The most important factor in tomorrow's forecast will yet again be that wind. It'll be out of the northeast anywhere from 10